The summer air was thick with heat in a quiet, manicured suburban neighborhood. The sound of sprinklers ticked rhythmically across freshly cut lawns, the scent of barbecue still lingering from a cookout 2 houses down. But beneath this postcard-perfect image, something ugly was brewing. It started with a black SUV pulling slowly into the cul-de-sac. The tinted windows rolled down just enough for 2 men to peek out. They weren't in uniforms, at least not real ones. Their navy shirts bore bold yellow letters that read HOA Police. But something about it felt wrong. Their badges gleamed cheap in the sunlight, and their eyes carried a mix of arrogance and fear. On the porch of a neat brick home sat Marcus Reed, sipping his coffee, wearing a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants. To the neighbors, Marcus was quiet, polite, maybe even too reserved. What they didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any man. Behind his calm demeanor was a past that terrified criminals across the country. He was an FBI legend, the kind of agent whispered about in briefing rooms. His undercover work had toppled gangs, infiltrated cartels, and brought down men who thought they were untouchable. He had scars on his back and medals in a locked drawer to prove it. But Marcus had chosen peace now, choosing to live low-key in a suburban neighborhood, raising his teenage son alone after his wife passed. As the SUV stopped in front of his house, Marcus knew something was off. His instincts, razor sharp even after retirement, told him this wasn't a friendly visit. "Excuse me, sir," one of the men barked, stepping out of the car with a swagger that was half cop, half thug. "We've had reports that you don't belong here. You need to come with us for questioning." Marcus didn't move. He took another sip of coffee, eyes fixed on the man's badge. The cheap plastic caught the light wrong, almost like a child's toy. "HOA Police," Marcus repeated, his voice low and steady. "That's not a real department." The second man, taller, stepped forward aggressively. "We're authorized by the Homeowners Association to enforce community rules. And right now, you're trespassing." Marcus's jaw tightened. He had lived here for 3 years, paid every HOA fee on time, and kept his property cleaner than most. This wasn't about rules. It was about race, about power, about intimidation. The fake cops weren't expecting him to challenge them. They expected fear, submission, maybe even begging. But Marcus just stared at them, unblinking. "You've got 5 seconds to get off my property," he said, his voice calm, but deadly serious. The taller one laughed. "Or what?" Marcus leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "Or you're going to find out exactly who you're messing with." And in that moment, something in Marcus's tone sent a chill through them. For the first time, the so-called HOA Police hesitated. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by the faint buzz of cicadas in the trees. But then, the short one reached into his pocket, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for violation of HOA." That's when Marcus stood up. And suddenly, he wasn't just a quiet man on his porch anymore. He was the hunter, the shadow, the feared agent that criminals prayed they'd never meet. And the 2 men had no idea what storm they had just unleashed. The phone in Marcus's pocket buzzed again. He pulled it out, expecting a routine message from his son, or maybe a reminder from his bank. But instead, the screen lit up with a single encrypted notification, an old FBI alert system he hadn't seen in years. "Target flagged. Reed residence. Possible infiltration attempt." Marcus's pulse slowed, not quickened. Years of fieldwork had trained him to process fear differently. He didn't panic. He calculated. His eyes flicked from the message to the 2 men standing in his driveway. Suddenly, their fake HOA uniforms made more sense. This wasn't just neighborhood harassment. Somebody had sent these clowns, someone who knew who he really was. "Sir," the shorter man said, trying to sound official. "Step off the porch now." Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket, tilting his head just slightly, as if sizing them up. His neighbors were beginning to peek through curtains, drawn by the raised voices. A couple of kids on bicycles slowed down at the end of the street, wide-eyed, sensing drama. Marcus didn't want a scene, but the men weren't giving him a choice. "I told you once," Marcus said evenly. "Leave my property." The taller one smirked. "You think you're tough, huh?" Let's see if you're tough in cuffs. He reached forward, trying to grab Marcus's wrist. In one fluid motion, Marcus shifted his weight, twisted the man's arm behind his back, and shoved him face first against the hood of the SUV. The shorter man froze, shocked at the speed. Gasps rippled from the neighbors watching through glass. The taller one grunted in pain. "What the hell? How did you?" Marcus leaned in close to his ear, his voice a dangerous whisper. "Rule number 1. If you're going to impersonate law enforcement, don't pick the wrong house." He released the man abruptly, stepping back. The second one fumbled for his phone, clearly shaken. "You just assaulted an officer," he barked. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "An officer?" He pointed at the cheap patch stitched onto their shirts. "That patch came from Amazon." "Your badge?" "Plastic." "And that gun holster?" "Empty." The taller man, still rubbing his twisted shoulder, glared. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Wannabes. Hired muscle. Sent to rattle me. The question is, who sent you?" The shorter one's face paled, eyes darting nervously as if Marcus had just read his mind. But before Marcus could press further, a sharp voice cut across the yard. "Is there a problem here?" Mrs. Henderson, the whole president herself, stood at the sidewalk in her wide-brimmed sun hat, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her tone dripped with disdain. She had lived across the street for years and made no secret of her disapproval of Marcus. "Yes, ma'am," the shorter fake cop said quickly, seizing the moment. "This man is refusing to comply with whole police directives. We're here to escort him for violations." Mrs. Henderson crossed her arms. "About time. I've been telling the board he doesn't follow the rules. Look at that grass. It's an inch too long. And don't get me started on the basketball hoop in the driveway." Marcus's jaw flexed. He mowed every Saturday. The hoop was for his son, a temporary setup the hoe had pretended to allow. This wasn't about rules. It never had been. He stepped closer, locking eyes with Mrs. Henderson. "Do you know these men? They're working with the hoe," she snapped, though her tone wavered just slightly under his stare. "We have authority here." Marcus chuckled darkly. "Authority? You let 2 imposters roll up with toy badges and harass residents because you don't like who lives across from you?" Mrs. Henderson's cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to being challenged. Neighbors' curtains shifted again. Whispers traveled down the street. The kids on bikes whispered, "Dang, he's fighting back." The shorter man, desperate to regain control, stepped forward. "Sir, final warning." Marcus didn't move. His voice cut through the summer air like a blade. "You don't give me warnings. You don't have that power. But I'll give you one. Walk away. Right now." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The taller one clenched his jaw, clearly itching to make a move. But the memory of how fast Marcus had handled him held him back. The shorter one shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Mrs. Henderson for backup. But she, too, seemed less confident with half the neighborhood watching. Finally, the taller one muttered, "This isn't over." They climbed back into the SUV, slamming the doors. Tires screeched as they sped off, leaving a cloud of dust and suspicion behind. The neighbors slowly retreated from their windows. Mrs. Henderson huffed and marched back toward her house, muttering under her breath. Marcus stood alone in his driveway, the cicadas buzzing louder now. His pulse was steady, but his mind was racing. That alert on his phone. It wasn't random. Someone had marked him. Someone knew his past. He walked back to his porch, coffee still warm on the table, and sank into his chair. For the first time in years, the peaceful life he had built felt fragile. Inside, his son's laughter echoed from the living room, oblivious to the storm outside. Marcus clenched his fists. Whoever was behind this, whether it was the hope, these imposters, or someone bigger, had just made one grave mistake. They had awakened the man Marcus Reed used to be. Cliffhanger that night, Marcus would discover just how deep this setup went. And the next time those fake cops came back, they wouldn't be alone. The night settled heavy over the neighborhood, crickets filling the silence. Marcus sat at his kitchen table with only the dim light of a lamp and his laptop glowing. His son, Jordan, had gone to bed hours ago, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at him. That alert on his phone wasn't random. It was a warning, a coded message only old bureau insiders would recognize. He tapped into a secure channel, fingers moving with muscle memory he hadn't used in years. His old clearance was supposed to be inactive, but Marcus had friends in high places and favors owed. After a few encrypted hops, he got into the system, and there it was. His name, his address, flagged under Community Enforcement HOA Division. Marcus froze. HOA Division? That wasn't a real branch. Not in the FBI. Not anywhere. Someone had created a shell file under a fake division, just convincing enough for anyone who didn't know better. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. Somebody's covering their tracks, he muttered. A sudden noise outside made him snap his head toward the window. Headlights. An engine idled low, too close to his house. He killed the lamp instantly, moving in silence, shadows slipping from room to room. He parted the blinds just enough to see it. The same black SUV, parked down the street this time. But it wasn't alone. A second vehicle, unmarked but suspiciously tinted, sat across the intersection. Marcus's pulse remained steady, but his mind sharpened like a blade. Surveillance. They weren't here to spook him anymore. They were watching. He pulled out his phone and activated a silent camera app, snapping pictures through the blinds. The old instinct surged back. Angles, plates, timing. Whoever these guys were, they didn't know who they were dealing with. But then his stomach tightened. If they were willing to camp outside his house, Jordan was at risk. That thought alone was enough to set his blood boiling. By morning, word had already spread through the neighborhood. Kids whispered about the police cars watching Marcus's house. Adults muttered at the mailbox, shaking their heads. Some said he must have been in trouble with the law. Others quietly admitted they'd always suspected something about him. That afternoon, Marcus decided to test them. He stepped out casually, dressed in gym clothes, earbuds in, pretending to head for a jog. The SUV doors cracked open immediately. Two men leaned out, eyes hidden behind shades. Marcus smirked, stretching his arms. "Morning," he called, voice light but mocking. They didn't answer, just stared. He jogged down the sidewalk anyway, pacing himself. And sure enough, both vehicles crept forward, keeping distance but never letting him out of sight. Marcus's jog turned into reconnaissance. He ran the loop twice, mentally mapping exits, choke points, blind corners. By the time he returned, sweat dripping, he had more answers than questions. These weren't local thugs freelancing. Their movements were too disciplined, too professional. But they also weren't federal. No bureau car would ever tail this sloppily. No, these men were something in between. Contractors, mercenaries, and mercenaries only worked for one thing: money. That night, as Jordan played video games in the living room, Marcus stood on the porch with his phone pressed to his ear. On the other end was an old contact, FBI Deputy Director Harold Briggs. "Marcus," Briggs' gravelly voice sighed, heavy with years of politics. "You promised you were out." "I was out," Marcus said flatly, "until somebody put me back in. Two clowns in fake HOA uniforms tried to drag me out of my own driveway yesterday. Now I've got surveillance on me 24/7. Somebody with resources." Briggs was silent a beat too long. "Talk to me, Harold." Finally, Briggs exhaled. "There's chatter. A private group calling themselves HOA Enforcement has been popping up in multiple states. Started as neighborhood watch wannabes. Now they've got funding, connections. Someone's using them as cover for deeper work." "What kind of work?" Marcus pressed. Briggs' voice dropped. "Eliminations, extraction, blackmail. They've been targeting black homeowners in exclusive neighborhoods, pushing them out. And Marcus, if they came for you, it's not random. Somebody higher up wants you gone." Marcus's hand tightened around the phone. His voice was low, controlled. "They picked the wrong man. Careful," Briggs warned. "They don't know who you really are yet. Use that. Marcus hung up, staring out at the glowing SUV parked at the curb. His reflection in the window stared back at him. Not the suburban father, but the agent he once was. The next confrontation came quicker than expected. 2 nights later, around 9 p.m., there was a pounding on the door. Marcus opened it slowly, finding the same fake whole police from before. But this time, backed by 4 more men, all dressed in dark tactical gear without insignia. Mr. Reed, the shorter one barked, trying to sound official. You've ignored multiple notices. You're coming with us tonight. Behind them, Mrs. Henderson stood smugly, arms crossed, clearly thrilled. Finally, this whole neighborhood has been patient enough with you. Jordan appeared in the hallway behind Marcus. Dad? What's going on? Marcus didn't turn his head, but his voice was sharp. Go upstairs, son. But now, Jordan hesitated, then bolted up the steps. Marcus stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. His voice was low, almost calm, but deadly serious. You bring 6 men to my house in the middle of the night, wearing knockoff uniforms, trying to take me in front of my kid? The taller one sneered. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Marcus smiled faintly, though his eyes burned. Oh, you boys don't even know what hard looks like. The men shifted uncomfortably. Something in Marcus's tone carried weight they couldn't explain. Last warning, the shorter one said, though his voice cracked slightly. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper only they could hear. You've got 3 seconds to back off before I stop pretending I'm retired. 1, 2. Before 3 could fall from his lips, one of the mercenaries lunged. Marcus moved like lightning. Cliffhanger in less than 10 seconds. The entire neighborhood would see exactly why Marcus Reed was the most feared FBI agent alive. The first mercenary lunged forward, arm outstretched, aiming to grab Marcus by the collar. Bad move. Marcus stepped sideways, hooked the man's wrist, and in one fluid motion snapped his arm across his shoulder. A sharp crack echoed in the night, followed by a scream that made the neighbor's porch lights flicker on. Before the others could react, Marcus pivoted, driving his elbow into another man's gut, knocking the wind clean out of him. The mercenary crumpled to the ground, gasping like a fish out of water. The taller fake cop froze for just a moment, eyes wide. This wasn't a scared homeowner fighting back. This was a professional, a predator. Take him down, he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. The other 3 rushed forward. Marcus moved with terrifying precision. He swept the legs of the first, spinning him onto the grass with a grunt. The second swung wildly, but Marcus caught his wrist midair, twisted, and slammed his face against the porch railing. The wood rattled, a smear of blood staining the white paint. The last man drew a taser, sparks snapping in the dark, but Marcus was faster. He kicked the weapon clean out of his hand and followed with a brutal knee strike that dropped the man instantly. It was over in less than 10 seconds. 6 men down. The streets silent except for groans of pain. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, mouths open, phones in hand. Some recorded. Others just stared in disbelief. Mrs. Henderson, who had stood proudly watching just moments before, was now frozen in place, her clipboard trembling in her hands, her face drained of color. She finally understood. Marcus Reed wasn't just another neighbor. Marcus turned his gaze on her, cold and unblinking. You brought this circus to my door, he said, his voice steady, but seething with restrained fury. Do you have any idea who you've invited into this neighborhood? Her lips trembled. Why you attack them? You'll pay for this. Marcus chuckled darkly, stepping closer. Attack them? They broke into my home, threatened my son. If I wanted to attack them, none of them would be breathing right now. Mrs. Henderson stumbled back, nearly tripping over the curb. Behind Marcus, one of the mercenaries groaned, clutching his broken arm. He's not supposed to fight like this. Marcus's eyes snapped to him. Not supposed to? The man's eyes widened. He realized too late that he'd said too much. Marcus crouched, his face inches from the mercenaries. Who sent you? The man shook his head, lips clamped tight. Marcus's hand shot out, gripping his collar, pulling him close. His voice dropped to a whisper, low and terrifying. You think I haven't broken men like you before? Talk. Now. The mercenary swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his temple. Finally, he whispered back. It's not the HOA. It's bigger. Someone bought us out. Said to scare you off. Said you were a threat. Marcus's grip tightened. Who? The man hesitated. Then his eyes rolled back. His body convulsed violently. Foam bubbled at his lips. Marcus dropped him instantly, stepping back. Poison, he muttered. They've got kill switches on their own men. The other mercenaries started convulsing too, one after another, like dominoes falling. Within seconds, all 6 were unconscious, their bodies twitching before going eerily still. The neighbors gasped. Mrs. Henderson let out a scream, stumbling backward. Marcus stood over the bodies, fury in his eyes. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was execution. Whoever was behind this had planned for failure. And now Marcus knew one thing for certain. This was personal. He pulled out his phone and snapped rapid pictures of each face, each uniform. Even dead, they'd tell him something. Inside, Jordan's voice called out nervously. Dad? What happened? Marcus took a breath, forcing his tone to steady. Stay upstairs, son. Don't come down. The boy's footsteps retreated, and Marcus's mask slipped for just a moment. His jaw clenched, his fists tightening. They had come to his home, threatened his family, and silenced their own men. This wasn't about the HOA anymore. This was a coordinated strike. As police sirens wailed faintly in the distance, neighbors had clearly called 911. Marcus knew he had a choice. Explain this to local cops and risk being painted as the aggressor, or disappear into the shadows and hunt down the truth himself. He chose the latter. When the cruisers pulled onto the street, red and blue lights bouncing across the houses, Marcus was already gone. The porch was empty. Only the 6 lifeless mercenaries remained, sprawled in his yard like discarded dolls. Neighbors swore later they'd seen Marcus vanish into the night like a ghost. Some said he ran. Others swore he just melted into the shadows. But Marcus was already 3 blocks away, moving with speed and silence, his mind razor sharp. He had contacts to call, files to pull, names to dig up, because now the war had started, and Marcus Reed was stepping back into the fight. Cliffhanger that night, Marcus would uncover a shocking connection. The fake HOA police weren't just mercenaries. They were tied to a corporate network, one that had powerful enemies inside the government itself. The city skyline glowed faintly in the distance as Marcus sat in his car, parked beneath an overpass on the edge of town. He had stripped off his suburban disguise. No more jogger's hoodie, no more casual dad look. Now he wore dark tactical gear, the kind that moved with him like a second skin. His eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the laptop balanced on the passenger seat. Lines of code scrolled rapidly as he hacked through layers of encryption. He tapped further into the system, and a new file appeared. A list of targeted homeowners across multiple states. Almost every name was Black or a person of color who had recently moved into affluent communities. Families were harassed, fined into bankruptcy, intimidated until they left, or worse, disappeared without a trace. His fists clenched. This isn't just about me. This is systemic. Marcus's phone buzzed again. A name flashed across the screen. Nia Carter. He hesitated before answering. Nia wasn't just any contact. She was an investigative journalist, and more importantly, an old friend. They hadn't spoken in years, but if anyone could expose this, it was her. Marcus? Her voice came through, low and cautious. Nia, you still chasing truth? Always, she said. But if you're calling me, it means trouble. The kind with teeth. Marcus gave her the rundown. The fake HOA cops, the mercenaries, the kill switch poison. Straightest Global's name behind it all. For a moment, silence. Then Nia spoke, her tone sharp. Marcus, I've been digging on Straightest for months. They're backed by billion-dollar real estate investors. people who want to reclaim neighborhoods. I found eviction patterns, lawsuits buried in red tape, families who just vanish. If you've seen it firsthand, this is bigger than I thought. Marcus's jaw tightened. They came after me. My son was in the house. Her voice hardened. Then we burned them down, Marcus. But we need proof. Hard proof. I'll get it, Marcus said, but I'll need help. That's when the second call came in, Briggs. Marcus, you stirred a hornet's nest, the deputy director's gravelly voice warned. Stratus has allies in the bureau. You push too hard, they'll bury you. Then I won't push, Marcus replied coldly. I'll hit. Don't do this alone, Briggs said. Marcus's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. A second vehicle had just pulled into the lot, headlights off. He recognized the silhouette instantly. Jason Cole, an old partner from his FBI days. A man he trusted with his life. The passenger door opened, and Jason slid in, shaking his head with a half grin. You couldn't stay retired, could you? Marcus smirked faintly. They didn't give me a choice. Jason tossed a folder onto the dashboard. Intel. Stratus is planning a coordinated sweep this weekend. Multiple neighborhoods. They call it Operation Clean Slate. Guess who's on the top of the list? Marcus flipped the file open. His own photo stared back at him. Beside it, names of several other black families in his subdivision, circled in red. Jason's voice lowered. They're not just coming for you, Marcus. They're coming for all of you. The weight of it sank in. This wasn't just his fight anymore. It was the whole community's. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we're not waiting for them. We hit first. By dawn, Marcus was in his garage, pulling out old gear he thought he'd never use again. Kevlar, encrypted comms, weapons carefully locked away. Jordan peeked in, eyes wide. Dad, what's going on? Marcus paused. He wanted to shield his son, but lying would only put him in more danger. Some people want to hurt us, Marcus said evenly, but I'm not going to let them. Not you, not our neighbors. Do you understand? Jordan swallowed hard, then nodded. Can I help? Marcus's eyes softened. Not with this, but you can do something important. Look out for the families. Make sure they know what's coming. Jordan straightened, trying to be brave. I can do that. Marcus smiled faintly, clapping his son's shoulder. That's my boy. That evening, Marcus held a quiet meeting in the backyard of a trusted neighbor, Mr. Johnson, a retired Army vet. Word spread quickly, and soon half a dozen families gathered, whispering nervously as Marcus laid out the truth. They're coming for all of us, Marcus said, voice firm. This isn't about HOA rules. This is about power. They want you gone, but we're not going anywhere. Murmurs rippled through the group. Fear, anger. We fight? Mr. Johnson asked, his eyes narrowing. We protect, Marcus corrected. Our homes, our families. I'll handle Stratus directly, but I need you alert. Watch the streets. Call each other. No one gets caught alone. Nia stepped forward, recording equipment in her bag. And I'll document everything. If they try to bury us, we'll make sure the world sees. The families nodded, resolve growing. For the first time, Marcus felt the tide shifting. This wasn't just his war anymore. It was theirs. Later that night, Marcus, Jason, and Nia huddled around a table covered in maps and files. Their target, Stratus's local command center, hidden in plain sight in an HOA enforcement office downtown. Jason tapped the map. We break in here. We pull their hard drives. We expose the whole operation. Marcus's eyes narrowed. We don't just expose them. We end them. Cliffhanger, the next move would change everything. Marcus was about to take the fight from the suburbs into the heart of Stratus itself. And what he found there would shake him to his core. The Stratus Global Solutions HOA enforcement office didn't look like much from the outside. A clean brick building downtown with glass doors, a corporate logo etched in silver, and the kind of bland landscaping that screamed normal. But Marcus knew better. Normal buildings didn't have infrared sensors along the roofline. Normal offices didn't have black SUVs with tinted windows circling every 10 minutes. and normal security guards didn't move like trained operators. "This isn't an office," Jason muttered, peering through binoculars from the rooftop across the street. "It's a fortress." Marcus's eyes tracked the guard rotations, his mind calculating. Fortresses have weak points. Beside them, Nia adjusted her camera rig. "We're really doing this, huh?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "You wanted the truth? Here it is." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Then let's bring them down." At 2:13 a.m., under cover of shadows, the three made their move. Jason disabled the side gate with a code he'd pulled from an old contractor's badge. Marcus led the way, his movements fluid, silent. Every step a memory of years spent infiltrating hostile compounds overseas. Inside, the building smelled faintly of bleach and gun oil. Too clean, too controlled. They slipped down a hallway, past rows of offices with glass walls. But instead of cubicles and printers, the rooms were filled with weapons racks, tactical vests, and surveillance monitors showing live feeds of suburban neighborhoods. Marcus recognized faces, families from his community, people who were supposed to feel safe in their homes. "This is worse than I thought," Nia whispered, filming everything. Marcus's jaw clenched. "Keep rolling. This is what buries them." They reached a steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Jason knelt, pulling out a compact toolkit. "Give me 30 seconds." But Marcus's instincts prickled. He raised a hand. Wait. Too late. The door clicked open, and a red light above it started flashing. An alarm. Jason cursed. It was a trap. From the far end of the hall, boots thundered. Armed men poured in, rifles raised. Marcus shoved Nia behind cover. "Stay down." Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes strobing the dark hallway. Bullets shredded glass and drywall. Marcus moved fast, snapping 2 quick shots from his silenced pistol, dropping the first 2 mercenaries. Jason covered the flank, his carbine barking short. Controlled bursts. But more kept coming. "Back," Marcus shouted, pulling Nia down another corridor. They sprinted through the maze of halls, alarms blaring, red lights flashing. A steel shutter dropped suddenly in front of them, sealing the exit. Trapped. Marcus's eyes darted around. He spotted an access panel, wires exposed. Without hesitation, he yanked a knife from his belt and sliced the right ones. Sparks flew, and the shutter jammed halfway up. "Go," he barked. Nia slid under first, Jason right behind. Marcus followed last, rolling as bullets ricocheted off the floor behind him. They burst into a server room, the air cooled with the hum of machines. Racks of drives blinked with data. "This is it," Nia guessed, pulling out a portable hard drive. "Help me copy everything." Jason and Nia scrambled to connect cables, downloading files. Marcus stood at the door, pistol raised, listening. Footsteps. "Too many." 30 seconds, Jason called. Marcus fired 3 precise shots through the doorway as shadows closed in. Men dropped, but more kept advancing. 10 seconds. Nia cried. Marcus reloaded, his eyes cold. "You've got 5. The last progress bar hit 100%. Nia yanked the drive free, shoving it into her bag. "Move," Marcus barked. They bolted, weaving through the labyrinth. Sirens blared now. Outside, police would be on their way, but Marcus knew better. Stratus owned the cops. Help wasn't coming. They rounded a corner and stopped dead. Waiting for them in the atrium was a man Marcus recognized instantly. Director Charles Voss, former FBI, now head of Stratus operations. The man Marcus had once exposed for corruption years ago, who had quietly disappeared before trial. Well, Voss drawled, his suit immaculate, his smile reptilian. "Marcus Reed, I should have known you wouldn't stay buried." Marcus's grip tightened on his pistol. "Voss, you're behind this circus?" Voss smirked. "Not just me. Stratus is the future, Marcus. The government's too slow, too weak. We're building a new order. Efficient. Profitable. And you? You're just collateral." He gestured, and half a dozen mercenaries fanned out around him. Jason muttered, "We're outnumbered." Marcus's voice was steel, "Not outmatched." Voss chuckled, "You really think you can stop progress? We've got contracts, funding, politicians in our pocket. You can kill a few dogs, Marcus, but the machine will keep turning." Marcus stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "You built this machine on fear, on targeting families who couldn't fight back. But you made one mistake." "And what's that?" Voss sneered. Marcus's voice dropped, low and lethal. "You came for mine." With a roar, Marcus and Jason opened fire, the atrium exploding into chaos. Mercenaries dove for cover, bullets ripping through glass and steel. Marcus moved like a ghost, precise, unstoppable, every shot finding its mark. Jason covered his flank, their old rhythm unbroken by time. Nia crawled low, clutching the hard drive like her life depended on it. Voss retreated behind his guards, fury flashing across his face. Kill him, but one by one, his men fell. Marcus closed the distance, finally standing face to face with the man who had orchestrated it all. Voss raised a pistol, but Marcus was faster. He twisted the weapon away, slammed Voss against the wall, and pressed his own gun under the man's chin. The atrium fell silent. Broken bodies littered across the floor. Marcus's voice was a whisper of steel. "This ends tonight." Cliffhanger before Marcus could pull the trigger. Voss smiled and revealed a detonator in his hand. The entire building was wired to blow. Marcus's finger twitched on the trigger, but Voss's grin stopped him cold. "Go ahead," Voss whispered, the detonator glinting in his hand. "Pull that trigger, and we all go together." Jason cursed under his breath. "He's wired the whole building." Marcus's eyes darted around the atrium. Red blinking lights tucked under stairwells, wires snaking along the walls. Voss wasn't bluffing. Naya's voice cracked from behind cover. "Marcus, we've got the files. Let's get out before he..." Click. Voss pressed the detonator. For a split second, silence. Then, boom. The floor shuddered violently as a shockwave ripped through the building. Glass walls exploded outward, shards raining like crystal daggers. Smoke and fire belched from the ceiling vents as alarms wailed in every direction. "Move!" Marcus barked, grabbing Jason's arm and hauling Nia to her feet. The trio sprinted toward the emergency exit as a second blast shook the atrium. The walls cracked, chunks of plaster raining down. Flames licked the edges of the hallways, filling the air with choking black smoke. Voss was gone. Somehow, impossibly, he'd slipped into the chaos. Jason coughed, covering his mouth. "Figures. Rat always finds a sewer. Later," Marcus snapped. "We survived first." They barreled down a stairwell, 2 flights at a time. The metal railings were hot to the touch, the concrete vibrating under their boots. Nia clutched the hard drive tight, refusing to let it go even as sparks rained around her. Another explosion roared above them, sending a fireball down the stairwell. Marcus shoved Nia and Jason through a maintenance door, just as the stairwell collapsed in a roar of twisted steel. They stumbled into a narrow utility corridor, pipes hissing with steam. The air was suffocating. Jason's flashlight beam danced across the walls. "Dead end." Marcus scanned quickly. His eyes landed on a service hatch bolted shut. Without hesitation, he ripped a crowbar from the wall and slammed it into the hinges. Metal screeched, sparks flying, until the hatch gave way, revealing a crawl space that sloped downward. "In," he ordered. Nia hesitated. "That's barely big enough." "Now," Marcus snapped. She dropped to her knees, crawling into the darkness. Jason followed, grunting as the space squeezed his broad shoulders. Marcus slid in last, pulling the hatch shut behind him just as the corridor erupted in flames. The crawlspace funneled them into a drainage tunnel beneath the building. Cold, foul-smelling water splashed around their knees as they slogged through. The explosions above grew distant, muffled, until finally, a final thunderous roar shook the ground, dust raining from the ceiling. Then silence. They emerged into the night, stumbling out of a maintenance grate half a block away. The three collapsed onto the wet pavement, gasping for air. Behind them, the straightest building burned, flames clawing into the sky. Fire engines wailed in the distance, neighbors pouring into the streets with phones raised, recording every second. Nia sat up, clutching her camera. Despite the soot on her face, her eyes burned with fire. We got it. We got it on film. Straightest can't bury this anymore. Marcus wasn't convinced. He watched the smoke rise, his gut twisting. Voss had escaped, and that meant this wasn't over. Back in the neighborhood, the fallout was immediate. News vans parked outside, neighbors whispering in clusters. Kids held close to their parents. Mr. Johnson shook his head as Marcus walked up the driveway, bruised, singed, but still standing. Lord have mercy, Marcus. What did you drag us into? Marcus looked him in the eye. Not dragged, exposed. They were coming for all of us, whether we knew it or not. The families murmured, fear mixing with resolve. They weren't running this time. Jordan rushed from the porch, relief flooding his face. Dad. He hugged Marcus tight, refusing to let go. Marcus closed his eyes for a second, holding his son close. This was why he fought. Later that night, in the quiet of his living room, Jason dropped a manila folder onto the table. What we pulled tonight: contracts, operations, bank accounts. Enough to cripple Stratus if it goes public. Nia, but they'll come harder now. Voss won't take this loss quietly. Marcus rubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion finally creeping in. Then we prepare. This was just round one. Jason gave a grim chuckle. You always did know how to make enemies. Marcus's eyes hardened. Enemies I can handle. It's the snakes hiding behind badges and boardrooms that need cutting out. Meanwhile, across the city, Charles Voss stood in a penthouse office, untouched by the chaos. He sipped whiskey, watching the flames devour his building on the news broadcast. A younger operative approached nervously. Sir, we lost the data center. Voss smiled thinly. Let Reed enjoy his victory. He thinks he's exposed us. All he's done is step back into the arena. He raised his glass, eyes cold as steel. And now, the hunt begins. Cliffhanger Marcus has proof in his hands, allies at his side, and a community waking up to the fight. But Voss is alive, powerful, and already plotting his counterstrike. The next battle won't just thread the neighborhood was quiet for the first time in days. No strange cars idling at corners. No fake HOA officers walking the sidewalks. Just the sound of sprinklers hissing across manicured lawns and crickets chirping under the moonlight. For the families on this block, though, nothing felt normal. Marcus stood in Mr. Johnson's backyard, where a group of neighbors had gathered around a long picnic table. The faces were tired, anxious, but also united. Children clung to their parents. Teenagers listened with wide eyes. These weren't just people who shared a zip code anymore. They were a community forged in fire. Nia set up her recorder on the table, addressing the group. What we pulled from Stratus is explosive. I've spent the last 24 hours verifying files. We have contracts, payments, surveillance footage, even internal memos that prove targeting based on race and income. Once I publish, this goes national. Gasps rippled through the group. One woman whispered, so we weren't paranoid after all. Marcus nodded. No, they wanted us gone. All of us. And they won't stop unless the world sees what they're doing. A man across the table clenched his fists. So what? We just wait for them to come back with more guns? Mr. Johnson spoke up, his gravelly voice steady. No, we do what we did before. We stand together. We watch each other's backs. We don't let fear run us out of our own homes. For the first time, Marcus saw nods instead of hesitation, strength instead of fear. The families weren't broken. They were galvanized. Later that night, Marcus sat on the porch with Jordan. The boy stared out at the street, restless. Dad? Jordan asked softly. Were you scared? In the building, I mean. Marcus thought about the flames, the gunfire, Voss's smirk as he held that detonator. He exhaled slowly. Yeah, I was scared. Fear's real, son. It keeps you sharp, but it's what you do with it that matters. Jordan nodded, still quiet. I thought you might not come back. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. That's why I fight, Jordan. So you don't have to grow up looking over your shoulder. So this community doesn't have to wonder if their skin color makes them a target. Jordan looked up at him, determination burning in his young eyes. Then teach me how to fight smart like you. Marcus smiled faintly, pride swelling in his chest. One step at a time. Meanwhile, Nia sat in her hotel room, typing furiously. The glow of her laptop screen reflected in her tired eyes as she pieced together the biggest story of her career. She paused over one line of her draft. Straightest Global Solutions is not an HOA enforcement agency. It is a weaponized machine, funded by elites, designed to purge black families from neighborhoods they rightfully call home. She stared at the sentence, knowing the backlash would be brutal. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, threats. But she also knew the truth mattered more. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Static. Then a voice, low and smooth. Miss Carter, publish, and you won't live long enough to see the comments section. The line went dead. Her hand trembled as she set the phone down. But instead of deleting her draft, she typed faster. The next morning, news vans clogged the entrance of the subdivision. Microphones, flashing cameras, reporters calling out for Marcus and the other families. One mother whispered, overwhelmed, "We never asked to be on TV." Marcus stepped forward, raising his voice. Then let them hear us on our terms. We speak together. We show them we're not victims. We're survivors. With that, the neighbors gathered on the front lawn. Nia filmed as Marcus stood at the center, flanked by Mr. Johnson, Jordan, and other families. Reporters shouted questions. Is it true private contractors attacked you? Do you believe this was racially motivated? Are you planning to sue? Marcus answered steadily. Yes, it's true. Yes, it was racial. And no, this isn't about lawsuits. It's about justice. We won't be pushed out. We won't be silenced. This is our home. The crowd of neighbors erupted in applause, their voices rising together. For a brief, shining moment, empowerment filled the air. But not everyone was smiling. Across the street, a black SUV sat parked with tinted windows. Inside, Charles Voss watched the scene through binoculars. His face was calm, unreadable. One of his men shifted in the passenger seat. They're turning this into a movement. The files, the cameras, it's going viral. Voss lowered the binoculars, a smirk tugging at his lips. Then we adapt. They think sunlight will kill us, but all it does is make us move smarter. He tapped the dashboard, his voice cold. Let them celebrate. The higher they climb, the harder they fall. The SUV rolled away, blending into morning traffic. Back at the lawn, Nia stopped filming. This is it, Marcus. The moment the world starts listening. Marcus looked out at the families, neighbors laughing through tears, children playing again as if fear had never lived here. For the first time in weeks, hope had taken root. But deep inside, he knew this was only the calm before the next storm. The house was quiet. For the first time in weeks, Marcus could hear nothing but the gentle tick of the clock on the wall and the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. No helicopters overhead. No strange SUVs crawling past the neighborhood. Just stillness. He sat at the dining room table, a mug of coffee cooling between his hands, staring out the window at the sunrise. Jordan shuffled in, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Dad," the boy mumbled, sliding into the chair across from him. "Morning, champ," Marcus said softly. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was weighty, healing. Finally, Jordan asked, "Do you think it's over?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "No, not over. Not with men like Voss still out there. But," he paused, meeting his son's eyes, "we've shown them something they didn't expect. We showed them we don't scare easy." Jordan tilted his head. "Is that enough?" Marcus thought back. Gunfire echoing in hallways. Neighbors trembling on lawns. Naya's trembling hand holding her camera steady while the truth came spilling out. "It's a start," Marcus said. Later that day, Marcus walked the block, checking in on neighbors. He saw kids on bicycles again, their laughter ringing out like bells. He saw families planting flowers in their yards, reclaiming the soil they'd nearly been forced to abandon. He saw Mr. Johnson coaching a group of teenagers on the basketball court, his booming laugh carrying down the street. Life was creeping back in. As he walked, people stopped him, some with handshakes, others with hugs. One mother whispered through tears, "Thank you, Marcus. My kids sleep again because of you." Marcus shook his head gently. "Not because of me, because of all of us. We stood together." That's the lesson. That evening, Naya's article dropped. It hit every major platform at once. The hidden war in America's suburbs. How private contractors target black families. The files Marcus and Jason had stolen back, every word. Images of weapons caches labeled HOA enforcement. Invoices to politicians. Emails casually discussing demographic removal. Within hours, it was trending nationwide. Cable news anchors argued over it, some calling it the biggest civil rights scandal of the decade. Others tried to spin it as conspiracy theories. But the footage, raw, undeniable, spread faster than spin could keep up. Protests flared outside Stratus-affiliated buildings across the country. Families who thought they were alone finally realized they weren't. They had names now, faces, a cause. That night, Marcus sat Jordan down. He wanted his son to understand, not just what happened, but why. "Son," Marcus began, voice low, "what we went through isn't new. It's just the same fight our people have faced for generations. They changed the uniforms. They changed the rules. But the goal's the same, push us out, keep us down." Jordan frowned. "So it never ends?" Marcus reached over, squeezing his shoulder. "No, it never ends. But that's why we don't stop either. Every time they push, we push back harder. Every time they try to silence us, we speak louder. That's the legacy we carry. That's the fight you'll inherit one day." Jordan's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then I'll be ready." Marcus smiled, pride and sadness mixing in his chest. "That's all I could ever ask." Jason dropped by later, a rare smile on his face. "You see the news?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, it's catching fire." Jason chuckled. "We did some damage, brother. Stratus won't recover from this one." Marcus's gaze darkened. "Don't underestimate Voss. Men like him don't fold. They adapt." Jason leaned against the wall. "Then so do we. And next time, we'll be ready." That night, Marcus wrote in his old leather journal, the same one he'd carried overseas in war zones, the same one where he kept notes on cases that had nearly broken him. He wrote, "We are not defined by the battles they force on us. We are defined by how we choose to fight them. Dignity is resistance. Justice is legacy. And unity is survival." He closed the journal and set it aside. Across the city, in a luxury penthouse bathed in shadows, Charles Voss stood at a window, staring at the skyline. The firelight from his cigar glowed like a coal. "They think they've won," he muttered. A figure behind him asked, "Do you want me to move on them now?" Voss exhaled smoke, a cruel smile